What if I told you that one of the most important prophetic books of the Bible isn't actually one book, but two? It sounds a little crazy, but when it comes to the book of Jeremiah, that is the reality that historians and theologians have been wrestling with for centuries.
Okay, let's get right into it. The whole mystery comes down to two very different ancient versions of the book. On one hand, you have the Masoretic text, the MT. This is the Hebrew version, and it's the foundation for pretty much every English Bible you'd pick up today. But then there's the Septuagint, or LXX, which is the ancient Greek translation. And here's the thing, it wasn't translated from the same Hebrew text. It came from a completely different version, one that was a lot shorter and had its chapters in a totally different order.
And when I say shorter, I'm not talking about a few missing verses here and there. The Greek version is about 1/8 shorter than the Hebrew one we read. That's thousands of words. So the huge debate is, were those words missing from the original, or were they added in later?
And that, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. Which one is closer to what Jeremiah actually wrote? Now, you might think the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls would have solved this, right? Well, nope. It actually made the mystery even deeper, because they found fragments of both versions. This proved that these two very different editions of Jeremiah existed at the same time in the ancient world.
So how do we start to unravel this? Well, our first clue is hiding in plain sight, right inside the book itself, in its famously chaotic structure. For a long time, this was seen as a major flaw, but it might just hold the key. And believe me, scholars have not minced words about it. This quote from Robert P. Carroll is pretty typical. For centuries, people were just baffled by the book's timeline. It jumps back and forth between different kings and decades with no obvious reason. It was a huge roadblock. You can almost feel the academic frustration here. For years, experts have called it everything from enigmatic and puzzling to a hopeless hodgepodge. There's just no clear chronological path through the prophecies and stories.
But then, a major breakthrough happened. What if the chaos isn't a bug, but a feature? Scholars started to realize that maybe we shouldn't think of Jeremiah as a single, linear book. Maybe we should see it as an anthology, a curated collection of sermons, prophecies, and biographical tidbits all gathered together.
Thinking of it as a collection totally changes the game. And that leads us directly to our second clue. Because if it's a collection, well, somebody had to do the collecting. So who were they?
Incredibly, the book itself tells us this absolutely wild story about its own creation. Jeremiah dictates his prophecies to his scribe, a guy named Baruch. But when the scroll is read to King Jehoiakim, the king famously takes out a knife, cuts the scroll into pieces, and throws it in the fire. But they don't give up. Jeremiah dictates it all over again, and Baruch rewrites everything and adds even more. It shows us that from the very beginning, this was a living, evolving text.
So, what this all points to is that the book we have today is a composite text. Jeremiah's original words were the starting point for sure, but his scribe Baruch and probably other editors later on played a massive role in compiling, arranging, and even adding to the material over many, many years.
Okay, so the text itself points to a long editing process, but does the world it describes line up with reality? For our next set of clues, we're going to step out of the library and onto an archaeological dig to see if history backs up the story.
Get this. This is a Babylonian ration tablet. It's basically a grocery list, and it confirms Jeremiah's account of Judah's king Jehoiachin being taken into exile. It actually lists the oil rations given to him and his sons while they were prisoners in Babylon. It's just a stunning piece of physical proof.
And the evidence just keeps coming. These are the Lachish letters, urgent messages scratched onto pieces of pottery during that final Babylonian siege. One letter reports that the signal fires from the nearby city of Azekah have gone out. This matches Jeremiah's account perfectly, where he names Lachish and Azekah as the last two cities to fall.
This next one is just incredible. In Jerusalem, archaeologists dug up these tiny clay seals, and they have the actual names of two of Jeremiah's accusers, people mentioned right in the book. Jukal, son of Shelemiah, and Gedaliah, son of Pashur. It's like finding the fingerprints of the characters in the story.
And to top it all off, we have the Babylonian Chronicle. This isn't the Bible's version of events. This is the conqueror's own official record of the 597 BC siege of Jerusalem. And it confirms the capture of Judah's king and the installation of a new one, lining up precisely with the historical backdrop of Jeremiah's prophecies.
So we have a chaotic anthology, a story of scribes and editors, and a stack of hard archaeological proof. Now let's bring all these clues together and see if we can finally put this puzzle together.
After all of this, the messy textual history, the story of the scrolls, the amazing finds in the dirt, we're back where we started, with that central question. But now, I think we can see it in a totally new light.
And here's the real insight. As the scholar Michael Heiser points out, maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. The ancient authors who quoted Jeremiah, like the writers of the New Testament, they used both the longer Hebrew text and the shorter Greek one, sometimes switching between them. They never saw it as a problem to be solved. They just treated both as God's word. So the Jeremiah problem isn't a mistake we need to fix. It's a gift. It gives us this incredibly rare window into how an ancient text actually lived and breathed and grew. It was this dynamic tradition shaped by prophets and scribes and whole communities over centuries, adapting to meet their needs. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Does knowing the complex, messy, and very human story behind a text like this make its survival and its powerful message more compelling or less? You could argue that the messy human history is precisely what makes its endurance so remarkable.